I should preface this by saying I grew up on a farm, but I am not currently a farmer. I don't know if the bling gave it away, but apparently I scream city girl now. I don't know why. But I've been in sales and marketing for over 20 years, and it has been, as Sarah mentioned, my honor to work with around 20 different emerging agripreneurs, as I like to call them. Can any of my fellow business friends raise your hand that are in the room? Fantastic. So tonight is more from the sales perspective. And one of the things I like to think of, or I like to say is, I want you to think like the client. I don't want you to think about the business selling. I want you to think about the person buying. All right? So we're going to flip the mindset a little bit. This is participatory. Can you give me an amen if you're willing to participate? Amen. We be in church. Give me another amen. Amen. All right, fantastic. The good news is you have had beer for the last hour and a half, so that is going to make me the best speaker of the entire event because of that precursor. Oh yeah, and a 4-pound pork chop. So fielding objections. We have a little interactive fun. We have a little quiz for you. You have 15 seconds. Tick tock, tick tock. Which Iowa county plants the most cover crops? Don't answer for everybody. Answer, 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 answer. 3 seconds. 2 seconds. It ain't Tama. There might have been a few lost leaders on the list. 71% of you guessed Washington County. Guess what? You are correct. Washington County had approximately 20,000 acres in their county, and that was the stats that I pulled a handful of years ago. Sarah confirmed that's still accurate, but I can guarantee it's well over 20,000 acres. Pretty impressive. Oh, Sarah was first to answer. She's cheating. All right, so here's the one thing I want you guys to recognize is if you had to go it alone, you had to do your own research, you had to inform yourself, maybe there was someone else that brought you along, I want you to think about the relationship that was involved in either influencing you or supporting you to start cover crops. Think seed dealer, another contract, all right, an agronomist. Think of all the different relationships. Cousin, influencer, neighbor. Oh, Bill Frederick made the list. I'll give you a chance to keep populating that. If you can't read, we've got knowledgeable seed specialist, neighbor, landlords, farmers, a lovely husband. So sweet. He didn't know you wrote that. All right. I want you to notice a trend. The biggest names that you see are personal relationships. That is someone who you know more than just a one-off interaction. Had you thought about that before? Had you thought about the fact that it takes a conversation with another human being face-to-face, preferably without a mask, but someday, maybe, right? To get into this cover crop conversation. I was actually working with one of the cover crop businesses, and they were telling me about this neighbor who had a couple thousand acres who would have been like the ideal target, except they would never, ever, 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 never use cover crops. Oh, they've got just a fill in the blank brother, right? This is the scenario. They've always done it this way. Their dad's tilled for this, that, and the other years. Guess what? There was a weather situation that prompted a different decision on that farm, and those 2,000 acres were covered in cover crop this year, and that business knew nothing about it. Because they hadn't had the conversation. They hadn't asked the question. The antagonistic neighbor that they thought would never do cover crops did cover crops, they just weren't involved in that conversation. So we want to change that. So in sales, I'm going to get a little techie on you, okay? You either are going to have a transactional relationship with your buyer, or you're going to have a relational relationship with your buyer. Which one do you think has loyalty? Transactional or relational? You guys are so good at this. Yes, relational. But marketing, which is great, is a very reactional play. And let me explain this. It's reactive. I get marketing to drive businesses to me so that I can react to that lead and I can turn it into business. But that means that the person who's wanting to do business with me has to come to me. In sales, it's proactive, which means I am prompting the conversation. I am prompting the relationship. I'm not waiting for them to come to me. The responsibility of that conversation from a sales perspective is on you, which I know a lot of you are like, yeah, I've had that conversation, they've all said no, I've just given up, right? That's why I'm here, you're gonna tell me how to have a better conversation so that they can buy from me someday, right? Heads nodding. Sometimes it isn't about the no that once was, because that no could have been not now. So let's talk about, are you allowed to participate? All right, I want you to stand if you're currently utilizing cover crops. Fantastic. I figured that would be a good majority of the room. All right, I'd like you to clap if you've used cover crops for over 20 years. Yes. 15 to 20 years. Oh, they're so ashamed. No? All right. 10 to 15 years. There you can go. All right. 5 to 10. A little more, a little more. Less than 5. All right, now I want you to sit down. Whoop, wait. I'm going to tell you when. If you have ever said no, hesitated, or perhaps reconsidered using cover crops at any point in your farming practice. Oh, you guys are so super loyal. All right, have a seat. That exercise was to help you understand that everybody started at one point. There was only a handful of claps that have been using cover crops for over 20 years, or a variety of different practices. A lot of people are fairly new to the practice. One thing I realized in working with these businesses is there's this sweet spot window of 3 to 5 years between when they think about starting, am I having any luck? Maybe I should do it again. I think I'll trust you, Bill Frederick. Okay, you're right, I'll give you a 3rd year. Oh, wow, earthworms, that's nice. Soil health, yeah. All right, so, we got 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. It takes 3 to 5 years to get to the loyalist level. That's a long time, you guys. It's gonna take a little bit of love along the way. So the thing is you've been a no at some point in your career. So the people that you're talking to, it might be a no, but it might be a no for not now. Keep thinking like that. All right, go back to your phones. Give you a chance to unlock your phones. This is where I need your feedback. What objections to cover crops do you hear the most? Lay it on me. Not enough time. Cost too much. Whoops, cost. Yep. Uses too much water. Won't work. Darn yield. Too expensive. Look at how fast cost is adding up. Ooh, planting date too late. Cost of spraying. Don't want to change. Too little time. Complicated. This list is so long. and still going. My landlord won't let me. That's a biggie. All right, so let's pick one. All right, now that we kind of know some of the biggies, let's pick one. Cost. Cost is an issue, right? Or in their mind, it's an issue. There are two different reasons someone chooses to buy something, and there are reasons why they don't buy. People will say yes on emotion. They will also say no on emotion, but they will justify with logic, which really sucks, because you're going to try to talk them into something with logic. They're not buying on logic. If they bought on logic, you'd be like laying out the cover crop book, right, Mark? And you'd be giving them all the, here's how you can make money and have wonderful soil health and increase your yield, just trust me, right? But emotions, you have to react to an emotional objection with empathy. So cost sounds logical, right? Does that sound like they're just running the nuts and bolts? Anybody in here think cover crop costs them more money than it makes them in the long run? So is cost really the objection? Or is it a smokescreen? Do you think it's a smokescreen, Fred? Fred thinks it's a smokescreen. Anybody else? So what do you think the emotion is behind the cost concern? What's that?
Change.
Change. It's kind of panicky, right?
Not having to tell Dad.
Don't want to get involved in an intense conversation with a family member.
Afraid of what the neighbors will think.
Afraid of what the neighbors will think. Those pesky neighbors are so nosy. Anybody else?
Risk of failure.
The fear of failure. The profitability unpredictability. They don't trust that it won't cost them money. Anybody else have an emotion behind the perceived logical objection? So here's what I want to challenge you to think through. In sales, you either have made an observation about their organization that makes you want to call on that farmer, right? The neighbor with 2,000 acres. You've made an observation, you have an assumption, or you can predict their future. Those are the reasons I might call Robert to want to sell him cover crops. But I can't make sure my assumption is true or my observation is accurate or my prediction of your future unless I ask Robert the questions to get him to admit the things that I already assumed to be true. Maybe I've observed soil running off into the ditches. I'm not going to walk up and be like, is that your soil? It's not so nice. I want to understand his organization, his operational practices, so that he will admit the things I already know to be true. I know he hasn't actually done the math to know how much it really costs. Cost was just easy. I also know that he hasn't thought through what removing a tillage pass might actually mean to preserving some of that time he talked about. I also know that he probably saw another neighbor screw it up and his dad rail him for it. Right? So I want you to think about asking the questions to understand why they have an objection. So let's react with empathy. You're not going to react with, oh, well, let me tell you how much it will actually save you and or make you. Now you're responding to an emotional objection with logic. Try something like, it sounds like you've thought about this a lot. And maybe they haven't actually saying that and they think to themselves, I actually haven't thought about this a lot. Maybe I should ask them a little bit more what they think. Or you can say something like, based on that, I can understand your hesitation. I can promise you that they expect to be sold. They expect you, as a cover crop enthusiast, to get into the why cover crops speech. What if you actually stopped and understood where they were at this point in time and why? Does anybody think this would work, or do you think I'm crazy? It works. It's the only way it works. Thank you, Dean. It's like you've talked to me before. Now, let's talk about logic. When they're giving you a perceived logical explanation, right? Give me an example of what you think would be a logical objection, like a true logical objection. Which one of those on the list was all logic? Like you can't overcome it. My landlord, that's a tough one, right? That's an absolute that you can't get past. You're not alone. You got to respond by relating. I experienced that too, or someone I know experienced that, until then you let the solution come out, not as you telling them what to do. It's just like, hey, so when I was talking with Todd, don't drop names. You can be like, I got another customer. Maybe you want to get Todd's name, Fred's name, whoever. You can use somebody else's scenario as a way to give them an example of how they can overcome that objection. You're not alone. Oh, I've heard that before. Another person had the same concern. I had that same concern. Then, when we had a sit down, when I brought them into the conversation, when I could show them how they could profit, when I did this, they actually changed their mind. So, by relating, you take out that smoke screen and help them realize that someone else has been there before. Because if they say that they want, was it you that said landlord? Was it over here? I can't remember.
That was Sarah.
That was Sarah? Yeah. So if you said landlord, then you actually probably secretly want my help understanding how to deal with your landlord if I'm the person who's having this pro-cover conversation. So I want to be on their side. But here's the kicker, and this applies to you as well. Why you chose to do cover crops for the first time is not the same as why you choose to do cover crops for a lifetime. There are so many different decision-making triggers. Would you agree or disagree? Agree? So guess what? Once you're 5, 10, 15, in some cases, congratulations, over 20 years into this, you're going to be talking to people that are at square one. So you're almost going to have to change your perspective a little bit and rewind to what it felt like to be on year one in those decision making. And you're going to have to understand what's going to get them in for the first time versus talking them into using cover crops because of the benefits you've seen over a lifetime. All right, so let's say someone says, yes, I'd like to order cover crops, Fred. Write it up. Where's my order?
Right here.
Right here, he says. Don't just take the yes for the yes. I want you to clarify their yes. The better you know how they got to yes, the better you can take the why they bought and replicate it with somebody else. So why did you do cover crops for the first time?
Erosion.
Erosion. All right, so you have another customer who realizes they've got an erosion issue. Their soil's in the ditch. We've got all these other issues. You want to ask questions to reveal that erosion is the real reason that they chose to do cover crops. Or reveal if there's someone else in their life that might have the same scenario. Have you ever stopped to ask, are you the only one that has had this situation? Were you the only one in your neighborhood that had
I'm sure not.
erosion issues? So once I know what the trigger is for one customer, I'm going to use that with multiple customers. They're going to reaffirm. The other thing that's super hard to do, who likes getting told no? Anybody? What's the suckiest part of sales? Getting told no. You need to accept the no's. The no's are okay. It's seriously okay to be told no. I get told no all the time. You guys are probably going to tell Sarah, no, don't ever book that lady again. It's going to be totally fine. But you laughed a little too loud at that, Fred. But the questions that I would want to know from a client that said no is, what would it take you to reconsider? I might not specifically say what would it take to reconsider, but if I know the reason why they said no, I'm going to question even deeper. So if they said no because of cost, I'm going to say, I understand. Sounds like you've really run through the cost analysis. And they're going to say, yes, I have. At some point, would you share with me that cost analysis? Because it would really be helpful as I work with other people that are concerned about the cost. Guess what? They never did cost analysis. They lied. But basically, my secondary question helped understand their no. And maybe then they would be like, well, I don't have a cost issue. Dad has a cost issue. Ding, ding, ding. Now we're going to be talking about Dad as the real objection. Oh, well, if I got Dad to say yes, do you think maybe we could consider what this might look like for the farm in the long run when it's your farm someday? Sure, you can talk to Dad. All right. Tell me why you think Dad said no. Oh, Dad said no because this insert the blank neighbor. Oh, tell me about that neighbor. Question, 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 question. I don't care if you tell me no. Understanding the no actually helps me get to yes. But here's the tricky part. You need to understand the not nows. James, anybody ever told you no? Have they ever turned into a not now and then became a customer later? Patience, but don't forget persistence. All right, so let's say, Jeremy, someone told you no, and you thought, fine, I'm out. I'll say hi to him when I see him at church, and I'll shake his hand at the coffee shop, but that guy's never going to change his mind, right? Who here reps a seed company in some fashion, right? Okay? How would it be if you're like, oh, that guy's never going to stop using Pioneer ever in a million years? And then you drive by and see the champion sign and kick yourself in the tail and think, oh, I don't know why he changed. Because you just assumed, gave up, stopped talking to him. Now, even if he was a no, Jeremy, it's okay. But I would want to know when his no is renewed every single year or every single scenario. Because there might be different triggers. I think that could be some of the issue in cover crops is the conversation has to happen multiple times a year. You can't just wait, right, until it's season to apply time, right? And it's the crunch time of aerial application, and then it's harvest, and gosh, if I don't get in and drill it, then you know what, I'm just out, right? Guess what? You're gonna miss that window. I tell a lot of my cover crop businesses, if you're gonna sell seed and you're gonna show up at that customer, you should be crop scouting your cover crops. No different than if you sold them their seed corn or their chemicals. You know why? Year 1 and 2 and 3, they're panicky. Like, this is all new to them. Maybe you need to have a different customer service relationship so that you can groom them to then tell that cool story to their neighbor, to their dad, to other uncles. Because I can promise you that they don't want to brag about something they don't understand yet. So if they can't brag till they're a loyalist, when they start seeing what's going on at year 3, 4, and 5, what happens if they feel unloved and insecure about their decision in year 1, 2, and 3? We were talking with Sarah about how do we exponentially advance cover crop acres across Iowa over the next, what were we talking, 5 to 10 years? And what was our goal?
13 million.
13 million. Where are we at right now?
maybe 2.
2 million. Does that freak anybody out? That's a lot of acres. The only way you're going to cover that many acres, I can promise you, is farm gate to farm gate, face to face, handshake to handshake, relationship to relationship, the big fat neighbor, family, and friend name. That's you guys. You guys are the neighbor. You are the friend. You are the family member. So it's going to have to be you having that conversation. All right. This one's fun. Which 2 sales statements best describe you? Number 1, in my opinion, sales is a 4-letter word. I avoid it whenever possible. Number 2, sales comes naturally. People come to me. They come to me when they want to buy. Number 3, I try to do sales, but it isn't my primary focus. Number 4, I love sales. I'm a natural people person. Oh, look at you already voting. I try to do sales. Wait. Oh, and then I have too much going on to focus on sales more than just once in a while. Ooh, I've had some bad sales experiences and I don't want to be that guy. There's a lot of 4-letter words out there. I'll give you a chance to answer. Sales is intimidating if you think of it like sales. Sales is just a conversation, people. That's it. You just have to be comfortable enough to want to have that conversation and to know how to have that conversation. So I figured the rest of our time together would be working through how to have that conversation. I want you to think about using me to help you prepare the questions that you could take into some of those people that have popped into your head, and I can guarantee that some of you have been making a mental list in your head about people that you wish would utilize cover crops, and or you wish you would have the guts to talk to about it, or you've talked to them about it and it's been a dead end, right? So I'm going to open it up to questions, and I want you guys to challenge me to kind of help you through that process, because that's what I'm here for. Again, remember, I'm a city girl who grew up on a farm who isn't a farmer, so give me some grace on the detailed logistics, but I'll definitely help you from the sales front.
How can you have that conversation with the neighbor when you're trying to rent the ground away from it?
He said, what happens when you want to rent the ground that the other guy's renting? Well, it depends. Are you trying to be maliciously competitive, which I doubt?
Competitive is malicious by nature.
So, frankly, I think it comes down to the landlord that might be hiring you over the person that's currently working the ground. Landlords are going to have to influence, you can influence landlords from the bottom up, but you can also go straight to the top. If you're talking to that guy and you want access to that ground, have you had a conversation with the landlord?
No, I'm just asking you a question. You're saying go to the neighbor that's productive agriculture and have a conversation with him. At the same time, you're trying to rent the ground out from underneath it.
Well, here's the question.
It's not malicious, it's just business.
All right, so if I were to consider that business, then the better he takes care of the ground, regardless of when I may or may not get the future rent contract, better for me, right?
I'm just saying I don't want him to use cover crops, because I don't want that landlord knowing that he's trying to improve the soil health.
Wait a couple of years.
He's basically saying, well, if he did cover crops and improve the land, then he'd never get to rent it in the future because he'd be the one that wants to save the day. Well, then I would go straight to the landlord and make that pitch myself. Anybody else?
I'm going to make a sale at a large corporation to try to convince the organization as a whole to switch that way, and it's an uphill battle.
He's talking about large organizations and organizational change being difficult. I think James and Bill, we've gone into this, right? You're like, take me to Walton. I want to talk to Walmart myself.
Where's Lucas at?
We can get Lucas to come next time, right?
Yeah.
Organizational change and corporations are all about influencers. Sad to say, power plays. So you need to figure out who has influencer power and who's the decision maker, and either who can influence the decision maker or who can influence the influencers. Who's the other power players? And then I would look at their competitor and someone else who's made the decision faster, smarter, better, who's ever moved the chess piece before. And I would either go learn from who's moved the chess piece before, or I would play them against the other corporation. Hey, Coca-Cola, Pepsi's been doing this, and really they're making some massive moves. I really want to consider your approach to this, that, and the other. That would be a competitive play. Or I do my research. Who sits in the seats that I want to influence? What role do they have? Who do I know that knows them? Who do I know that would network with them? This is when people like Sarah become your hammer, right? You find other people that are heavy in the industry and leverage them. That would come into play if you ever have countywide politics. And you guys ever have countywide politics? Anybody ever have NRCS issues? Say what? A lot of that could come down to the conversations that you have corporately as a whole, as an industry, but also what you're having politically at a countywide or a citywide level. Sometimes that means getting your peers collectively together to have a conversation on your behalf. Sometimes that means representing on a soil water district. Step into a leadership role. Sometimes it means getting out of your comfort zone. We have time for one more. They said you were a quiet crowd, but apparently we should have passed out shots so that everybody would interact. Please don't let sales intimidate you. Don't even think of it as sales. It's a natural, organic transition of the relationship. Be okay with the no. You're right. Be okay with the no, and understand that no's can also be not nows. And then don't leave them when they say no. Persistence with patience. Put thoughtful information in front of them. If you see a PFI article and you thought when you read it, that reminds me of Jim, send it to Jim. All you have to do is send him a text and say, you know what, I read this and I thought of you in our last conversation, and I thought it might be helpful for you as you're considering your options moving forward, period. You didn't ask him for the sale. You didn't pressure him into considering cover crops. If you legit read something, saw something, and thought about a particular person or a particular neighbor or friend or potential business partner, use the real reason for reaching out. It'll definitely help you prompt a really relational conversation with them. So I'll leave you with this. Which name came into your head tonight? Who are you going to talk to? What's the first question you're going to ask them? And when will you reach out? So that you don't let that little sales is a 4-letter word hesitation inside of you keep you from having some conversations that could cover even more acres and cover crops across Iowa.